you go.
Am I here?
You sure are. Welcome.
Thank you. Right. I'm sorry. I'm the most technology hampered individual you'll ever meet.
That's okay. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're just going to start a few minutes late, but that's okay. My name is Heather McChesney. I'm here at the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission. I'm very excited, and I'm going to keep this intro brief because I want to get all this information to you all because it's a very important topic. I'm very excited to introduce Madison Stahl and Bonnie Dunn, who are here with you. Madison, she's here legal aid. She's with Legal Aid of West Virginia. I believe you're based out of Morgantown. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. She's a lawyer with Legal Aid. Bonnie is an extension specialist with the Healthy Grandfamilies, and she is based out of West Virginia State University's campus. They're going to talk to us today about the benefits of grandfamilies and kinship families, which is a really big topic of conversation right now, and focus on the prevalence of foster kinship families, in particular grandfamilies, and the community supports that are available to help our students and our non-traditional families that are out there, because we're faced with this in West Virginia, and it's a confusing journey and avenue to walk down legally, financially. So I'm very excited to get as much information as we can, and I'm going to turn it over to you all. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. So I'm going to start us off here. Like Heather said, I'm Madison Stahl. I'm an attorney at Legal Aid, and I'm just going to jump right in. Maybe I am. There we go. So, of course, maybe every presentation by an attorney starts with a disclaimer. I'm going to read it word for word to you all. This presentation is provided for information purposes only by Legal Aid of West Virginia. Legal Aid does not warrant this information for any purpose. This presentation should not be considered legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship. The laws referenced in this presentation may have changed. The laws could also be affected by developments in court cases. Do not rely on this information or your interpretation of this material for any purpose. If you have legal question, you should meet with a lawyer. Okay, so I am going to go over the different types of custody, some benefits available with the different types, how Legal Aid can help, and a little bit about the specific project that I work on. So here's a list of the 4 types: legal custody, legal guardianship, foster care, and adoption. First, we'll talk about legal custody. This is kind of the most basic type. You have no court involvement in this type of custody. It is for relatives who do not want to be a foster adoptive parent or a legal guardian. It's done through a request to transfer legal custody. This could be done with an informal document. It could be notarized or not. There are some drawbacks about doing this type of custody, such as there's no financial or medical support available through public resources. You can sometimes get courts to award the parent or to make the parent pay you child support, but that's not guaranteed. One other thing, again, since there's no court involvement with this type, the parent can just come and take the child back if they want them, and you wouldn't have any legal recourse. Legal guardianships is a lot of what I do and what our program is focused on. And that is when someone other than a birth parent obtains legal and physical custody of the child. This is where the rights are transferred through a court process, usually beginning with a petition for guardianship. It can be filed in family court or circuit court, depending on the allegations against the parents. Something we like to stress with guardianships and with, divorce, custody, a lot of other situations, the circuit clerk, if you ask them for these documents, will charge you for them, but everything is available on the Supreme Court website. And it's pretty easy to navigate to find these forms. The West Virginia Supreme Court website, I will add. This guardianship, or this type of custody, I should say, is better than just a simple custody agreement because it can only end upon the happening of an event or a set period of time, such as when the child turns 18, or if, say, the parent decides, maybe they suffer from substance use disorder and they are now sober, they would have to file something with the court in order to get that child back. So it does allow a little bit more permanency for the child, and a little bit makes the caretaker feel a little bit better knowing that, they have that. This does not terminate parental rights. Like I said, a parent can come back and petition the court to get the child back. And like I said, this is kind of a lot of what we do here at Legal Aid. Next, you have foster care, and this is when the child is in the custody of the state. So, for example, through an abuse and neglect proceeding. It can be temporary or permanent, and the parents can voluntarily allow the state to have custody of the children, or it can be through an abuse and neglect proceeding. Next, we have adoption, and it is the most permanent type. It creates the parent-child relationship between the kinship caregivers. So now you are basically stepping into the exact role of a parent, and it terminates the parental rights of the mother and the father. You take on all legal and financial duties for the child. It can't be undone, and this can be seen as a good thing, permanency for the child in a lot of cases. However, for example, sometimes we'll get cases where they're not sure if they want to do a guardianship or an adoption. So something to think about is that if you adopt, then you aren't eligible for some of the benefits that you would have. And also, if a court has ordered a parent to pay you child support, then that will no longer be an option. This is a chart that shows the 4 different types I just went over and how they fall as far as DHHR involvement and public resources. You'll see legal custody, like I said, is the bottom there. Guardianship's a little farther up, and then adoption and foster care. And, keep in mind for adoption and foster care, certain things have to be met. And for foster care, you have to be a certified foster parent. So sometimes just getting to that guardianship can be a huge help when the other options aren't available. Here are some important documents that we advise our families, our kinship caregivers that we get as clients to have. They can help with a petition for guardianship or getting medical help, getting counseling. When you have to apply for certain things, you'll need these documents at one time or another. They can be things that are difficult to get, but we can advise our clients on the best ways to get them, different forms to fill out and things like that. So that's just something to think about. Now we're going to go over some financial assistance options for the different types of custody. So if you are a certified foster parent, then you have access to different subsidies as well as foster care maintenance payments. If you are a kinship caregiver and not a certified foster parent, then you will have access to TANF benefits, or also known as West Virginia Works, or a kinship check. Now we'll talk about how this relates to education a little bit, since I know you guys have to do with the education system in West Virginia. So many of you have probably heard of the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. This is important when it comes to guardianships because there are only certain times where a child can be considered an independent person when it comes to filing for their FAFSA. Being considered independent allows them to not need their parents' information. So you can get in a situation where a senior is trying to fill out their FAFSA, but they live with their grandparents and they don't have access to their parents' information. So they may think that they can't apply, can't get these benefits, or this federal student aid. Well, if the guardians become guardians through the courts, if there's a guardianship in place, that allows that student to fill out the FAFSA form without having their parents' information. And this is very important. The guardianship needs to be granted before the FAFSA is filled out. And I provided ahead of time a booklet that we have that further goes into this process and how to do this. If you think there's anyone that could benefit from this information, any caregivers that you know, please feel free to share that with them. This is really important for us to get this information out there. Next, we have the John H. Chafee Educational and Training Vouchers Program. It is available if a child is or has been in foster care, and is a voucher of up to $5,000 per year for undergraduate education. Then you'll see the West Virginia Foster Care Tuition Waiver, again available if a child is or has been in foster care. It covers only tuition and fees. You must apply within 2 years of graduating, and it is only available after other financial aid sources for tuition and fees have been exhausted. So keep that in mind. So how can legal aid help? If you know a grandparent or kinship caregiver, please send them our way. Here you'll see the number that they can call to do an intake for hopefully to be a client. We'll discuss more about that in a moment. And then you'll also see where they can fill out an application online. I think you guys will have access to this PowerPoint to refer back to this information. If you don't, and I'll do another plug here, our website is very great. It was just redone. It's very accessible, and it also has so much good information about just about anything that we do. So I highly recommend checking that out as well, but you can also apply for our services there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about legal aid specifically, because I know sometimes it can be confusing about what we do. We are a statewide nonprofit organization of attorneys, paralegals, and advocates. Legal aid provides free civil legal assistance and advocates on behalf of people in need. We stress that it's underlined because people a lot of times get us confused with the public defender's office when I tell them who we are. And we're kind of the other side of that. We're everything civil. So you'll see we focus on matters affecting families, health, safety, and economic security. As I said earlier, that information allowed someone to call and apply. However, since we provide free services, a person has to be eligible in order to get those services. So here I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that works. So in order to be eligible, people must be under the maximum income and asset levels set by the federal government. There are some exceptions if the person has certain monthly expenses or meets other criteria. And I want you guys to keep in mind that this is complicated a little bit by our grants. So different grants have different thresholds for things. Mm-hmm. And there are also some other ways to get around these specific rules. So I always encourage everyone, if you think somebody has any kind of legal issue that we may be able to deal with, please send them our way. And if for some reason they're not eligible or something like that comes up, then at least we have some other programs and things we can refer them to. I just can't stress this enough that we want to be able to talk to everyone and to help everyone as much as we can. So just want to remind you guys of that. Some exceptions include if a client, well, if a potential client, let's say has West Virginia Works, that allows them to then become a client without going through the other eligibility criteria. Behavioral mental health patients and families, long-term nursing home patients, veterans, and victims of crimes such as financial exploitation, domestic violence victims, and sexual assault victims. So I specifically, like I said, we have different grants and with different qualifications, eligibility, and things like that. And I work on the Lawyer in the School program. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about our program because I know, again, that I'm talking to a bunch of educators throughout the state. So what Lawyer in the School program is an innovative effort to stabilize the home lives of West Virginia school children and enhance their education experience by helping with family legal issues. So basically what we're trying to do is to see, you know, for example, like I said, guardianship is a main focus of ours. Specifically, my grant is focused on stabilizing the lives of children who have been affected by the opioid epidemic. So you'll see that these children then go to live with their grandparents, and their grandparents don't have guardianships. And so where we come in is to kind of educate them, like I am you all, about the importance, the benefits available, to help them get the guardianships. And in turn, we are hopefully helping the child by giving them a stable home, stable income, not having to worry about things like that anymore. And that's kind of the focus of, like I said, of my grant specifically. So a few cool things about the Lawyer in School program that make us different from some of the other legal aid programs. We provide free walk-in clinics at the schools. We do this to hopefully remove barriers to legal assistance by meeting families in a place that they feel safe, comfortable, and familiar with. So the mindset is that you hope that the guardians and the parents in these situations are familiar with their kids' school, with the staff, and so they will feel comfortable coming in and talking to us. No appointment required. I know for mine, at least, anybody can come in. We'll chat with you kind of about what's going on, how we can help. And then if we see that there's a possibility that you could become a client, we will do the intake. So that's another benefit of our specific program, is that we have paralegals who do the intake. So you skip the process of calling or filling out the application online, and I keep in touch every step of the way. And if for some reason or another you're not eligible through income or a conflict, those are the two main things, then I will figure out how we can help you some other way, sending resources, things like that. Again, we want to help everyone as much as possible. So I always encourage people, send everyone our way. Next, you'll see community lawyering. So that's kind of what the Lawyer in the School program is all about. Not only do we meet the families in their communities, at their schools, hopefully where they feel comfortable being, but we also get involved in these communities, and we go to outreach meetings, and we, the family resource networks, the healthy grandfamilies, and we find out where the need is and how we can help and how we can be involved. We want to know how to best serve our counties that we're in, and that's one way that we do it. We also get referrals by reaching out and doing these things. So it's another way for us to reach families who need our help, because a lot of time those same families are working with these other programs within the community. So again, community lawyering, that's kind of the crux of the program. So below you'll see a list of the different counties that we are in and that are currently staffed. Preston and Taylor County are the counties that I cover. Marion County is covered by another attorney in the Morgantown office, and then Kanawha and Cabell. I actually got word this morning that we have a new attorney that was hired in our Princeton office down in Southern West Virginia. So hopefully our Lawyer in the School program down there will get moving. If you're down there, then be looking out for information. And if you are interested in getting the program in your school, please reach out to us. We can chat about the options and things like that. Obviously, issues come up with grants and, other barriers to getting the program in all the counties. But it is ultimately our goal to have this in every single county somehow, because we've seen how truly wonderful and effective this program can be. And, please feel free to reach out to us to learn more about it. I just added a flyer so you guys can get a feel for, what our clinics are about, what you would see if you had a Lawyer in the School program in your county. This is the flyer for Preston County, and you can see there's a list of the different types of things that we can help with: custody, visitation, guardianship, adoption, employment, benefits, Medicaid, evictions, public housing, expungements, and the list goes on. As long as, like I said, it's a civil legal issue, and somehow if we can help to stabilize the lives of the kids, we will help. You'll see I have clinics at Preston County High School every Thursday. I'll be going there today after this presentation is over. And again, anybody can come talk to me if they think there's any way that we can help them out. And here is the contact information. First, you'll see Melissa Lilly. That is our project coordinator and supervisor. She would be a great contact if you are interested in getting this program in your county. You'll see my information there. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about anything I've talked about today. I'm more than happy to chat. And then you'll also see the information for my paralegal, Jenny Lane. She is basically the backbone of our northern region of the program. And, she'll always be able to direct you in the right way as well if you want to reach out to her. Okay, so that's it on my end. If Bonnie wants to start, we can, or I'd be willing to take some questions before Bonnie gets started.
How about this, Bonnie, while you set up your PowerPoint, if there's anybody in the chat that has some questions, we can field those for Madison. So Bonnie, if you want to go ahead and start to share your screen while we do that.
Madison, do you have it? Are you putting it up or am I?
Your PowerPoint?
Yes.
I can.
I thought it was attached to yours.
Let me shut this off for just a second. I'll pull it up.
So if you all have any questions there in the box or in the chat, that would be a great time to ask them. While we wait to see if anybody does. I think the Lawyer in Schools program is just fantastic. I didn't know that you did that. You offered that. So I went really quickly and I found the link and threw it up here in the chat box. So you guys, those of you that are in attendance right now, you have an accessible, easy way to go and find more information on that. What a great community resource for our blended families, our communities to have that's free.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the issues that we have so often is people don't know where to look. They don't know where to go. They don't have the finances to find the help they need. And this is something that takes care of all of that, which is fantastic. So please, those of you that are in attendance right now, when you have students and families that have reached out to you, remember this. Remember that this is available. And if it's not available in your county, Madison gave you the email to the people that can maybe make it happen in your county. If there's enough interest and there's enough need, perhaps that's something that can happen. So with that said, let's keep moving right along and let's hear from Bonnie. And at the end, we'll compile any other questions and comments and we'll address those as well. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. So Madison, am I going to have control of this?
Well, since I pulled it up, I have control of it.
Okay, well, that's fine. So you can move as I talk. Well,
the one thing
I appreciate that, Madison. My secretary retired, and I'm now a person of one running the statewide program, and so I'm a little discombobulated, to say the least, with what's going on. But thank you all for having us on today, and I want to talk a little bit about this community of household types called Grandfamilies. One thing that I want to note right up front is that we have partnered with Legal Aid of West Virginia from the very beginning 6 years ago, and they have been a tremendous help to our families because there hasn't been one grandparent raising a grandchild that we have had contact with over the last 6 years that didn't need some type of either legal counsel or legal representation. And so this is a perfect match for Madison and I to be talking today. Also, I want to note that there is a television show on the Library Network called Healthy Grandfamilies, and it also can be accessed through YouTube. And yesterday, I had Melissa Lilly on as my guest, and we talked about all these things that Madison covered. So if you want to reference that in the future, and she talked about almost the exact same thing Madison has talked about. So we have that. Well, let's get started. Grandfamilies is really an epidemic in this country. It's in West Virginia, and it is a whole new community of household folks. You can just move as I move here, Madison, if you'll go to the next one. The national trends, 2.5 million grandparents are responsible for the grandchildren. That is a lot of families. Every child in the foster care system, 25 at least are being raised by grandparents. Now, these are statistics from 2017, and I'm sure that's higher. And grandfamilies are saving taxpayers at least $6.5 billion a year by keeping those children out of foster care. Because as you probably know, that foster care is a whole process, and then the foster parent gets a check per child that they are fostering. And so grandparents are doing a great service as far as our tax base is concerned, but yet grandparents do not receive a lot of assistance. Next slide, please. The statewide trends, West Virginia is second in the nation of the percentage of children and grandparents relationships. We're at 7%. Mississippi is number one. We're always so thankful for Mississippi because they keep West Virginia out of first place in many instances. Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana, and Virginia tie with us for second place. I want to tell you that over the last 6 years, this has gotten bigger and bigger, because when we went into the pilot project with Grandfamilies, we were fourth in the nation. And in 2 years, we had risen to second. And we didn't have these other 4 states that were tying with us. And now look where we are. So this national trend is getting worse by the day. Next slide, please. The common reasons that grandparents are raising grandchildren, in red, substance abuse. It comes to the top. About 85% of the grandparents raising grandchildren that were in our pilot project for 3 years were there because of substance abuse. And as the substance abuse, the opioid epidemic gets worse, so does grandparents raising grandchildren, because they are the major residual from this problem that we have in our society. These individuals who get trapped in the whole scheme of drug abuse, many of them have children, and what happens to the children? They seem to get reverted back to grandparents. Not only grandparents, I want you all to know that we now have a rising number of great grandparents raising great grandchildren, which is a phenomenal concept if you think about it. And we also had a significant number of great grandparents raising great grandchildren. And that just makes me pause and think about what has happened to the generations in between. Next slide, please. This is challenges that they face, and all of them are important. And I highlighted legal status because that's what we are talking about today, but it is one of the major issues. Most of these grandparents have gotten the grandchildren into their home just by them being dropped off. CPS was not particularly involved. Some cases CPS is involved, but here they are. They suddenly find themselves retired, trying to have a good time, trying to enjoy life, and all of a sudden we have 3 children standing at the front door. And this is a true story. A knock at the door late at night, and here are my 3 grandchildren, and they are not coming to visit and to be loved on and sugared up and sent back home to mom and dad, but they are here to stay permanently. So these grandparents really are at a loss for what to do. They are afraid to reach out for any type of help, assistance, because they're afraid the CPS will take the children. Grandparents want to raise the grandchildren as long as they have the health and they have enough resources to be able to do that. But they are so afraid of the bureaucracy and the way the system works. And little do they know, foster system is on overload. Obviously, we've got billboards on every highway in this state asking people to consider to become foster parents. But so in reaching out, then they also do not know they need to try to get the guardianship and all the things that Madison referred to. And this is a problem that we have recently discovered last year when the school system with your senior students filling the FAFSA. And I know I had a meeting with the chancellor of higher ed. And as we were talking about all this, I said, this is really affecting the ability for your students to get into college. And we worked on that. There's some legislation was enacted so that we could do a better job at helping them navigate that FAFSA system. But the grandparents also have all these other issues. Can you just imagine financial support? I would be shocked if any of you all who are listening to this and participating in this event right now have put into place a retirement plan to raise 3 grandchildren. That's just not something you think about. Your retirement plan is about maybe a beach house, or maybe what trips I'm going to take. I'm going to travel internationally, or I'm just going to sit at home and knit and crochet and do woodworking, or whatever it is you're going to do. None of us stop to think about, oh, well, maybe I should put this many $1,000s into my retirement plan because I know I'm going to be raising grandchildren. That is not what has happened. And unfortunately, in most of our cases, as we did the pilot project for 3 years from 2015 to 2018, and as we have progressed 3 years since, actually Healthy Grandfamilies is going into its 7th year. The story has remained the same with our grandparents. They are on Social Security. Some do have an extra retirement benefit from jobs that they worked at during their career life. But those funds are not enough to really cover raising children in this day and age. But this legal status has been a big issue, and also navigating the school system. And I really should have highlighted the school issue, because school systems are not like they were when these grandparents were raising their own children. Needless to say, a great grandparent when they were raising their children. And so, and then just forget about the great-great-grandmother who came to us trying to raise a 10-year-old great-great-grandson. And now her scope of knowledge of the school system was nothing like it is today. So these are things that we address. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide. So what does our program look like? It's an intervention. 6-month intervention is how it was designed. In the beginning, the first 3 months, we advertise, we recruit, we were enrolling grandparents into the program so that we could give them support services. We have an 8-week face-to-face program, 2 hours at one setting per week for 8 weeks. We cover 10 topics. At the end of that time, they get a certificate of completion. We feed them. We feed them very well at these settings because, you know, West Virginians, you feed us, will show up. We also provide childcare. We tried to remove any barriers that we could remove so that these grandparents could come in, sit down, fellowship, meet with other grandparents raising grandchildren, and become more comfortable with this newfound family structure that they are in, and in a setting where they could ask questions and not feel threatened or feel like they were going to lose the children. During this time, we have a social worker who is independent of the system. We contract with they're licensed social workers. We contract with them on an hourly basis to be there to give added support to the grandparents, to do hand holding if they need, whatever it takes. At the end of that 3-month period, then the grandfamilies get an additional 3 months of concentrated support from the social worker. Now, at the end of the 6 months, we don't leave them just sitting. At that point, they know there's a place that they can contact. There's a point of contact. There's someone that they can reach out to and get help at any point in time. Because as they go through the process of raising these children, some of them are getting these children as infants. As a matter of fact, we had one grandfamily in the very first session of the program in 2016 who I got a phone call one night from CAMC Women's and Children's and said, your daughter's here, has given birth to a drug-dependent little girl. You have got to come up here. And, you know, the rest was history. So some of them even get these children at birth. And so there's a long time, there's 18 years of that time that they're going to be spending with them, plus if they're going to try to support them through college. So we are here permanently. So the next slide, please. So COVID hit about the time we had trained the entire state of West Virginia. There is a Healthy Grandfamilies Coalition in every county in the state of West Virginia. You can find that list at healthygrandfamilies.com, which Heather has put that up on the screen. You go there, you can find out who the county contact person is, the coordinator, their phone number, their address, everything about them. If you want to call my office, you certainly can do that. And we can put that in the chat, my phone number, and it'll be at the end of this presentation. And I will direct you to whatever county contact that you need. But we had to change things. When COVID hit, we had all kinds of programs around the state scheduled face-to-face, and we were just so gung-ho and ready to go. And it just came to a stop, as you all well know, as it did in the school system. So I sat down and thought, we cannot leave these grandparents hanging. And so what do? So we had to go back to the old-fashioned way of doing things, phone calls and U.S. mail. I have paid for more postage since COVID than I have the last 49 years of my career, because we did so much to support them by U.S. mail. And so we would talk to them. They would call us. We had referrals. We wanted to help. What do you need? I had a lot of funding streams that provided monies to the program so that we could give them Walmart gift cards so they could get food and household items, clothing for the children. And we had a great system of accountability for those cards. And I was just totally amazed that every one that we sent out, and we sent out thousands of dollars in gift cards, we sent them a verification form, and we had 100% response of them signing that form, dating that form, mailing it back to us in a stamped, self-addressed envelope I had provided. And many of them wrote us notes. This is what I did with that Walmart gift card. My grandson needs shoes, or whatever the case was. These grandparents are responsible, and they want to do the best they can. And so they deserve to be recognized and to have the resources they need. Next slide, please. So this is an intervention program, but it's more than a program. And I want to make this perfectly clear. We are about support services, advocacy, intervention, and a point of contact. This is something grandparents raising grandchildren have never had. Foster care has it. A lot of other groups have it, but grandparents have been overlooked. And of course, the difference between grandparents and kinship care as a whole is the relationship, the biological connection. Because, you know, you might have had fun going to grandma's house, and as it goes, we say grandma sugars them up and loves them up and lets them do whatever they want to do, and then sends them back home to mom and dad. But the problem is the grandchildren go to the grandparent, and suddenly grandma is not nearly as fun as she used to be, because now there's rules, there's bedtimes, there's all these other things, because grandma and grandpa had to become mom and dad. And it's a whole different dynamic. Next slide, please, because I know we're going to run out of time. So this 8-week program, I want you to just look at these. These are the 10 topics we cover. And navigating the legal, and I'm so sorry, I should have put in red, navigating the school system. Those are two really big ones. Legal aid comes in and instructs, and these are discussions. These aren't classroom where you sit and you've got the teacher and you're a participant. We have group discussions. About the navigating the legal system, legal aid has always been there. They come in, one of their attorneys, and presents on all these legal issues that Madison talked about. And then navigating the school system, we always ask someone from the county board of ed, administrative group, counselor, whoever it might be, either from the county office or whoever the designate is, to come and talk about the county school system and to provide information that these grandparents need to know. So all these topics are important. I don't have time to get into them now, but there is a lot of learning that goes on, and we had great response. We had extremely positive response, and so you can see that it's too about education, but it's also about that advocacy and intervention. Next slide, please. This is a certificate they receive. It's on nice certificate paper. Many of them were able to use this in a legal setting if like a judge or someone was saying, well, but your age, you know, da, da, da. No, I attended these classes. I put in 16 hours. I'm serious about this. I want to raise my grandchildren. And so that has been helpful. Next slide, please. These are just some pictures. This one ended up in adoption. Matter of fact, I just saw this grandpa in the grocery store last night. He's now 73. And this is a family that got the baby girl from in the NICU, and he was with her for quite a few weeks. But they ended up adopting both children. That was the path they wanted to go. He's 73, she's 63. There was question about his age when they were trying to adopt, but they're one family that said to the judge there, said, listen, we went to these classes. This is what we learned. Here's our certificate. This is what we want to do. Next slide. I think these are just pictures of some of our families. We had, we hold these things in schools. We had them at Mary C. Snow. We hold them in public libraries and churches, community centers. We do them community-based. We take an extension. This is what we do. We take the knowledge and everything to the community, to the people. We don't expect the people to come to us. Next slide. So if I seem overly compassionate and crazy about this, the strangest thing, you know, stranger things can happen. I was raised by my grandparents. That was not a prerequisite or requirement for me to do the job I'm doing. It just happened that this whole concept of Grandfamilies, Dr. Brenda Wamsley, who at the time was the chair of the Department of Social Work here at West Virginia State, came to me and said, before I retire, I'd like for you and I to do this program together. And she starts talking and I start crying. And I said, go for it. Point me in the way you want me to go. We came up with a model program. I always paid tribute to my grandparents. I grew up in Rand, West Virginia. Now you know how old I am and probably think I'm crazy because I'm still working. But I am just so passionate about this population of people that is growing as I sit here presenting to you. Next slide, please. So let's just quickly go through these. These were baseline characteristics out of the pilot project. Next slide. 2 was the average number of grandchildren we had in the program. I want you to know that 5 nationally is the number of grandchildren that grandparents are raising. 5. Think about that. In the program, we had one family raising 7. Anybody want to raise their hand and volunteer for that one? Since then, I've had another grandmother by herself raising 7. As you see, the drug relationship was 85%. Next slide, please. Also, the children had chronic conditions, hyperactivity, behavior problems, obesity, learning disabilities. And who does this affect? This is the school system. These are the reasons you get the situations and the stressors with these children that you get, because they come from such volatile environments many times when by the time they get to the grandparents, and you have all these problems, these behavioral problems, and their ACEs scores are off the chart. And so much of this is caused by the upheaval in their life and their lack of stability. And we are learning more and more about this. And, you know, it's tragic because I know somebody, and I don't know who said it, said that a teacher has to deal with the child before they can deal with the student, and how true that is. And if you stop and really think about it, truer words were never spoken. Next slide, please. So here's my contact information. One of the things that we try to do when we have legal aid in now is to really emphasize this thing with guardianship, because as the students progress through the school system and prepare for college and needing to fill out the FAFSA and trying to educate these grandparents on what it's going to take to get these children towards higher education, whether it be a four-year program, vocational ed, whatever it is that you need to think about preparing them for the future. You know, in my day, FAFSA was not a thing, and my grandparents had an 8th grade education. So you can only imagine when I announced that I want to go to college and I want to be a teacher. And it was like, okay, well, what do we need to do? They had no idea. And what was worse, I didn't have any idea. But somehow we muddled through it. They supported me. They were there when I graduated from West Virginia State College at the time, and they were there when I got my master's degree from Marshall. And they were so very proud and pleased that they were able to support me through all that. And you know, folks, it's from those personal experiences that I draw what I do and how I handle these grandparents. So if any of you all have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those. Contact me at any point in time. I don't forget about healthygrandfamilies.com. Don't forget about the TV show. Yesterday was the 4th taping, and there's a lot of information there. And now you can pull any of those up on YouTube. So I thank you so much, Heather, for inviting me and inviting Madison. It has been a pleasure. And I think that we may be 2 minutes over.
No, actually, you have until 11:10. You've got plenty of time.
Well, goodness, I guess I was missing out on the timeline.
No, you're fine. So while we wait to see if anybody populates any questions here in the chat, you know, I just went over and I've got a tab here, and I think you all do too, where you can click on people that are in the session. And there's a really great cross section of the pipeline, the educational pipeline. And what I'm a big believer that the pipeline is the best representation of partnership, right? And the theme of our Student Success Summit right now is fostering partnerships that help promote student success, right? And I think West Virginians, we're known for helping take care of each other. I think it's one of our greatest assets, right? And if we've seen anything over the last year with the pandemic, our partnerships have become a lot stronger because we've had to rely on each other. Our family units here in West Virginia, like you were talking about, we've got some really unique environments, unique situations, very unique scenarios, especially here in higher ed when we've had to talk about college access, financial aid, issues and needs. Madison, you addressed some of those. I'd just like to first highlight and echo to everybody that's part of this session right now. There is support available.
Absolutely.
And I urge you all, I hope you took rigorous notes during this presentation, because both of these ladies just gave you so much information about the support and the resources that are available for a population of not just students, but adults who need these resources and support that is available and don't necessarily know that it's there or where to find it. And as teachers, educators, folks on campus who are on higher ed campuses that are the forefront in front of students, in front of grand families, in front of blended families, that you might be the first person that these people see, you know, you're the person to help put them in touch with these resources. I can't implore y'all enough to remember everything that you learned here today. Help make these resources more readily available to our families. Secondly, gosh, I learned a lot today. I don't even know where to start. Please, if you guys have questions or comments in the chat, I feel like I was just talking, and I was looking up websites for you guys. There's so much information, so much. I really am glad that you guys, you know, Legal Aid and the Healthy Grandfamilies were able to partner well together. It's a really great fit, because legally, it's a bit of a maze you have to navigate, especially for our grandparents.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here right now, I can't imagine my grandparents having to do the legal parts of it all.
Heather, the whole process is a maze, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why Healthy Grandfamilies has been so incredibly successful. And I'm not, my grandmother always said self-praise was half scandal, and she was right. But I can document the legislature supports us because of our success. And one of the things that your school folks need to understand that these grandparents particularly need directed to us, because one of the first things that we say to them is, are you getting a check each month? Madison referred to the child-only check under West Virginia Works TANF. Most grandparents, probably 90% of them, are like, nobody's giving me any check. Well, guess what? You're eligible. And we try to get them in there so they can start getting a little bit of money every month. It's they got a raise, $417 for the first child a month. It's prorated after that, about $40 per child, which I don't understand. But anyway, it's more money than they had. Then that helps take a little bit of that financial pressure off. And then we can go and deal with the legal issues, and then we can deal with the school issues and all these other things. We build on all these stressors in their lives. And the school system, I failed to say this, and I'm going to say it now. The school system is one of the single most important partners that we have besides legal aid, because you have the children, you've got the grandchildren. And that's the only way we can find out where they are to get this information to them. And so I encourage every county school system that is on this session today, please reach out to your Healthy Grandfamilies coordinator and partner with them. They desperately need your partnership and support, because that is the only way we can get to the grandparents and let them know there is help.
I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be my follow-up question to you. As part of a partnership, I know from my perspective, from my office, I'm sitting here thinking, how can I support you from my office? So off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, your community outreach sessions that you're doing. Well, my wheelhouse is college access. I help kids and families explore next steps. I could come to one of your meetings and talk about, like, let's talk about how do you talk to your grandchild about interests? Let's talk about next steps and do things like, do a Q&A session. Our financial aid folks could come and talk about navigating the financial aid process. We could partner that way. You're talking about the K-12 system, communication. We need to know where the kids are. Ashley Montgomery, who's with us, she's a college admission rep, and just said she's so glad she was here so she can understand this process much better. So how can our higher ed, how can our campuses help support you all? So that's my question to you. When it comes to partnerships, how can the other parts of the pipeline that aren't as obvious, how can they help support you all as well in the partnership here?
I think for us, just send people our way. If that's what I tell everyone, if you think, and a lot of times people don't think that might be a legal issue, legal aid could help with that until they've seen my face enough times in their Zoom meetings and hopefully in person soon, saying, this is what we do and we're here to help. And I want to stress to hopefully everyone here, if you have anyone that comes through your office or something who mentions this, what we're talking about, oh, I'm taking care of my grandchild, just, informally because I love them. Well, I think Healthy Grandfamilies and Legal Aid could help you. So I'm going to send you their way, give them a call, or, the law for my counties. Well, I know the lawyer in the school program exists, and maybe you could go chat with them, or something like that, as well as letting us talk to your people. So if we can get in there to talk to your people, and again, present like we did today, let them know what's available. Because I worked at Legal Aid for 2 years now, and I still say I work at Legal Aid, and people are like, what's that? And I'm just mind blown every time, but it happens over and over and over again. So just letting people know we're here and we want to help. We're not only ready, we want to help. So
well, and the other thing is that I want to leave everyone with, The grandparents do not have to be enrolled in our 6-month intervention, so to speak, because COVID taught us that we need to do so much more than that and be outside of that box. And so if the grandparent does not have anyone advocating for them, needs our help, all they have to do is call us and enroll, and we start helping them. I've been, yesterday, 4 grandparents' names and situations went to a social worker. And I've never seen these grandparents because that does not matter as much. But then we will offer that 8-week opportunity to them. And we've got a lot of them who've said, when you get ready to do face-to-face again, let us know because we want to come and learn more. So we need the contacts too. And so if I get them, they end up with Madison and their group. If Madison and them gets them, they end up with us. So yes, we need all that connection. And Heather, I think you all can be an important part of it.
Sure. Sometimes it's all about the connections, connectors to help people get the resources that they need.
Right.
100%. Well, you know, like they say, knowledge is power. I'm feeling more powerful today.
Good.
Dropped a lot of knowledge here, and I appreciate every last bit of it. I think everything you guys talked about today, it's going to keep continuing to help our students. It's going to keep helping to help our unique families, our blended families, our grand families. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you guys moving forward, blending some more partnerships. I think everybody that joined us today will as well, because this is definitely a population that needs as much support as we can provide for them. So with that said, I thank you all so much for being here with us today. Those of you who are in attendance, the next sessions start at about 11:10. So at 11:20. You've got about 10 minutes that you can go and take a quick break or go and visit the gallery area. We hope that you enjoyed this session with Bonnie and Madison, and we thank you all for being here. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather.
Yes.
Mhm.